When you're talking about a conversation, a dialogue between two people or several people, it's very irritating to have to go back half a dozen lines to find out who's speaking. You've broken the magic. You've sort of like burst the bubble of our emotional involvement with the people. So be clear as to who said what. But some people say you should always just say he said, she said, he said, she said. Don't use any other verb but said. I think that becomes unintentionally funny after a while. But it can also be absurd if he hissed and she snarled and he growled and she screamed, etc. It can become ludicrous. So he said, she said, he whispered, he shouted, and people move when they're speaking. You can say he paced the floor, or she sat still with her fists clenched and her knuckles white, so that it's not just he said, she said, he said, she said. But dialogue should give you a strong sense of who the people are, what their emotions are, and what their physical presence is in that moment. Lots of dialogue, you get it down the first time. And then you think of something really witty, something funny, or something very powerful and revealing that you could have said. This is your chance. You can do it. You can go back and rewrite the whole scene so that instead of just getting the information across, you've got passion in it and individuality, and you can almost feel the people as if you were sitting next to them. You can feel their breathing, their emotion, their passion. You can see the tears on their face or hear their laughter. And they're real. But very often, I think, the first time round when you're writing dialogue, you're just getting the information. You can make it better and better by doing it again. Be careful of verbal tics, and by that I mean words we the writers tend to use very often. I know I've got several. I remember having the opportunity to copy edit one of my own books once, and I think shimmering is a wonderful word, but not 25 times in one book. I hadn't realized what I'd done with it. It's a great word, but I had the sunlight shimmering through the leaves. I had the clothes shimmering in the lamplight. I had all sorts of things shimmering, and I tried to look up and see what other words had a very similar meaning. Nothing was quite as good, but I still had to change it to gleaming or glimmering or colours moving, dancing in light and shade, whatever, because it got to the point where instead of being moved by it, I was just laughing at it. We all have our verbal tics. Another one of mine is deep or profound. I use it far more often than I should. And we all have that, and it does detract from your work because other people notice. Descriptions of people. We don't want to be able to describe them to the police as if they were a missing person, how high, how tall they are, how much they weigh, etc. There'll be something about each person that is interesting. It may be they've got slightly uneven eyebrows, not different coloured eyes, that's been done to death. It may be they have a wonderful sudden flashing smile. Maybe they have a nervous giggle. And it's not just what they look like, it can be the way they move, their voices, their mannerisms. Just enough so we've got a sense of them, not so much that we could describe them in minute detail. One of my favourite writers was always describing people's eyebrows. To her, brows were terribly important, and so they are. It's one of the classic warnings to be careful how often you describe the weather. The weather can be very important. I read a really riveting book once. It was a thriller that the tension just mounted like I could hardly bear it. The weather was very important. It was in Los Angeles and it was a heat wave. And every day as it got hotter, the power grid was more and more threatened until the whole city was in darkness because it was overloaded and everything went out. Traffic lights, street lights, people's air conditioning, refrigeration, and so forth. And then, of course, the person who was stalking the hero arrived. But there the weather was important. Generally speaking, we don't want a day-by-day weather forecast unless it matters. If there's a hurricane, okay, that does matter. Describing clothes, decor, food, Food is interesting only if it's really interesting food. We don't need to know what somebody had for breakfast every day. It's a matter of cleaning up, tidying up, cleaning the lines when you go through and rewrite, and putting in the things you forgot. I'm very good at forgetting to set the time and the place. I've got people having riveting conversation and nobody's any idea where they are. I meant to start dramatically with a wonderful statement and then have the response and then the response to that. And I'd got 3 pages, no idea who's talking to whom and where we are. But I hadn't realised it. Rewrite is a time to say, at such and such a time, such and such a place. And you don't usually walk briskly for 3 pages without crossing an intersection unless you're walking along a country lane. You don't want to be interrupting all the time, but you do need to know where we are and when we are. Don't have a week with 8 days in it, or no Sunday. It's very easy. But remember what time of year we are. Don't accidentally change it from a heat wave to snow unless that really happened.